Welcome back to the Comics Cube, everyone. Today I'm joined by Sam Tsohonis, and we are here to talk about his Kickstarter comic, The Transmigratory Adventures of Philip K. in the Land of the In-Betweeners. How are you, Sam?
I'm great. How you doing? I know it's a mouthful, but I kind of like those long titles. At least I'm trying it out with this one.
It obviously stands out. Why do you love comics?
Well, when I was a kid, I got into, first I was checking out G.I. Joe off the newsstand, and then Star Wars first, and then G.I. Joe. I kind of evolved as the toy trends evolved back in the 80s. I was born in 77, so I think it was like 83 or 84 when I picked up my first comics, probably. And then I got into Inferno era X-Men, like when that was going on with Silvestri and Green and Claremont. And by the time that was like when I really became a comics fan. I liked Star Wars and I liked G.I. Joe, and I liked those comics. I loved all the Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow drama and stuff in G.I. Joe. But like that's when I really understood a little more about what comics were and what superheroes were beyond Superman and stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking back then, and with my friends that would read comics and stuff, we talk about how it's like, well, why aren't the cartoons like this? And why aren't the movies like this? This is how it should be. And so, there's something, especially as a kid, about the storytelling trends within comics that just spoke to me a lot. And as I aged, I got out of comics off and on. I kind of like, when I was in high school, I was kind of getting disappointed in the stories coming out of Image, which I kind of migrated over to with all the creators from the X books and stuff, and McFarlane and stuff. And I don't know, it was kind of weird because for a little while I was like, yeah, I think I'm too mature for comics now. And my parents were kind of supportive, but my dad never really liked that I was into comics when I was a kid and stuff. So, it was like, I think it was when someone at a party told me I should check out Preacher that I finally got back into comics again.
Preacher.
And it led me down this path that helped me discover how much more than superheroes comics can, tell stories about. So I guess it's just, as far as my attraction as a creator, it just is such absolute freedom. For this story, Philip K., I'd written it as a animated feature screenplay a couple of times. I've done a couple drafts of, and it's impossible to get anyone to fucking read that. Pardon my language, sorry. But
no problem.
It's really hard to figure out how to get those screenplays before someone's eyes that can make or any difference in it. And it's fate as a project. So and then as I kind of thought about it more and more, there's this freedom to tell the story like you want to also. Another thing that's disappointing when you're trying to write a screenplay is, and you're trying to write it for a producer, any kind of industry critical reader of screenplays, you have to follow a kind of format in order for them to take it seriously at all. And that just drives me crazy. I don't like to tell stories the way someone wants me to tell a story. I don't like to do anything the way someone wants me to do it. So that idea of being able to invent the way you tell the story, to invent the devices you want to compile in order to tell your story, I think it's really cool. And it's still kind of dawning on me how cool and unique it is, I think, as at 45 years old this year. So I'm still discovering myself why I love them.
Why did you try writing it as a screenplay first? Is that your day job or what? Or
no, I kind of hit this point in 2014 where I pursued visual art and creative writing in college, and I've been working on my writing throughout my life. I did a pitch for a different comic idea back in 2009. I got 12 pages into it, and I was just buried in work and stuff and trying to figure out how to make money, after the economy tanked anyway. So I kind of threw it out there and didn't get any response and left it. But it was the first time I'd ever been able to really finish a writing project that had any kind of large dimensions to it. Was when I finally drove through this first draft of Philip K. And it was I'd always kind of envisioned it as something for kids, something that adults would like, but something for kids. And I think when I first started drawing him, like in '97 or something, it was when Pixar was really starting to come into their own. And
Yeah.
so that whole new, and Nintendo 64 or Super Nintendo, one or the other, had just been really probably in 64. And like just this new kind of like graphic standard.
That's why he looks like Earthworm Jim.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
definitely loved Earthworm Jim and Toe Jam and Earl too. That was another favorite of mine. But yeah. And I think there's a little bit of Philip from Terrence and Philip on South Park. It was definitely around the time when they introduced that, so I might have totally been inspired by that. And then maybe like a mix between that and Bert from Bert and Ernie. I don't know, but I think he's enough of his own thing that I'm not like stepping on any IP or anything like that. So
Yeah. How many, like, so you mentioned Preacher, but what other comics, like in terms of writing and the artwork, influence you?
I think one of the things that really drew me to your show at first was that you had J.H. Williams on, and also Jeremy Cox, who, after seeing your interview with him, I hired him to help me to color a kind of cover for a different pitch I did last year. And I was like, oh shit, I can actually get a hold of this guy that worked on Promethea, because Promethea was, something that really cemented me back into comics when I discovered that. I'd heard about it from people and I just assumed it was like a knockoff Wonder Woman. And then I read it and I was like, I've always been into the occult and supernatural and spirituality. So Promethea is huge for me. And Alan Moore's
That's what
other
everyone thinks at first. Knock off Wonder Woman, and then they start
yeah,
reading it.
it's absurd. The idea that she writes poetry and becomes incarnated by this goddess, I thought that was powerful. And it speaks deeply to Alan Moore's kind of sensibilities about magic and what it actually amounts to in the real world. So I also, got into Sandman and Gaiman, and Jeff Smith and Bone was a really impressive read for me. I got it just as something for my nephew, and I started realizing just what an amazing storyteller the guy was, using kind of these more child aimed or childlike devices in cartooning, and it was just so powerful to realize that you can tell a sophisticated story without ever getting that sophisticated about what you're doing for the storytelling. I don't know. I mean, it's obviously subtle and sophisticated in all sorts of ways that aren't initially apparent. But I actually bought his artist edition of The Great Cow Race recently, and pretty impressed. There's like hardly any whiteout or any stains or marks on it. It's almost not fit for an artist edition.
So good. He's so good.
Man.
Yeah.
Another
same story. Like I got the Bone 1 volume edition for my nephew, and then like I started reading it. I was like, holy crap, this is really good.
Totally. I had to get a copy for myself. Yep.
Yeah.
Really dug Cerebus at one point too, and I still haven't finished the series, and I want to just I think I got to Jaka's story. I'd like to just find out where Sim got with it, because I know his kind of views on religion and metaphysics had changed a lot. I'd just like to see where he ended up, because I know he's doing some far out stuff with like a pan-Abrahamic kind of worship that he does. I've been following the guys at Living the Line a lot that helped work on that Strange Death of Alex Raymond book that he did. And I hear them mention every now and then kind of the extent of it. I'm interested in reading the rest of that. I really always appreciated the kind of fine art sensibility that went into Cerebus, and the way it mixed with the kind of cartooning sensibility. I know that Gerhardt had a lot to do with that, but just Sim's lettering and his own touch as a cartoonist, I thought had some real sophistication and elegance to it too. And that's, it's something about the kind of sarcasm in it too, I think was really something that appealed to me. I know he has all sorts of controversy surrounding him, and he's a human being like all of us, but I was pretty impressed by Cerebus when I discovered it too. And the list goes on, of course. But
tell me about your art style though. Like where did you pick up that kind of craftsmanship, that kind of stylization?
Well, I mean, I was pretty good when I was like 14 and 15. I guess when I kind of stopped, I got into Nirvana and started smoking weed, and then all of a sudden I couldn't draw anymore because I was smoking weed. But it changed me, like not only indulging in that stuff, but just kind of the stuff I got into in music and stuff. it was years before I could get back up to the level of proficiency I had gotten myself to in my early teens, you know. But I was also not very connected to the gestural impulse as an artist at that point. And I was really slow and, you know, not exactly copying other people's work, but I wasn't internally in command of the ideas about writing and form and stuff. I just kind of like emulated. I had to kind of think really hard. I think I've gotten a little more natural with it over, you know, a lifetime since then of experiments and different media. I studied visual arts in college, but I ended up like doing 7 years of undergrad because I transferred and I failed a lot of classes because I've just never really cared about failing too much. I did some
fine.
oil painting. What's that?
That's fine. It happens.
Yeah, absolutely. It's part of
Yeah.
succeeding here, but you know, it's only successful people that say that. But I did oil painting, sculpture. You know, I dabbled on a lot. I ended up going to Evergreen in Olympia with the hopes of studying animation and with the plan to make Philip K an animated thing. Because, you know, again, he's been in the back of my head, kind of gathering momentum and shape, like since I was just out of high school. The first day I took animation classes with Ruth Hayes there. I think she might still be teaching. I follow her on Instagram. The first thing she said to our class, she's like, well, I'm going to teach you how to animate, but if you want to tell your stories in animation, you need to learn how to write an animated screenplay. You need to learn how to write. And I was already invested in writing classes too, but that hit me pretty hard. I was like, oh shit, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because otherwise I'm just going to be going through and like doing betweens for the rest of my life or something like that. So I did a few experiments, and I always use Philip as the subject in animation, but I think it was just like a couple. I showed up in September of 2001, so it was like basically in time for 9/11 at the most radical school in the country, pretty much. And I got drawn into like the war resistance and a lot of other political activism. And pretty much most of my classes kind of followed in that line up until the point where I graduated. So uh, I was constantly working on little comic projects on the side, and I think I was an okay penciler most of the time, at least in my ability to render in pencil. Sometimes my compositions were lacking because I'd, you know, be lazy about backgrounds and stuff, but I was always messing my stuff up with bad inks. And I'd just like get in there and be like so ready to be done by the time the pencils were laid up. And I was like, well, I'm just gonna get it as fast as I can. And then by the time you spend all these hours inking it, it just looks like utter crap and no one can tell that you're a good artist at all. So that was a lot of what was happening to me as a draftsman for, you know, throughout my 20s and into my 30s a little. I remember going to Comic-Con in 2004. It's the only time I've been there, but I brought this work I'd done, and I knew it kind of messed it up with some rough inking, but I was just like, still I had to show it to someone. I had to like get some feedback. And I remember talking to Eric Larson for a minute, and he was like, you could see the look on his face. Like he's like, what do I say? Like, see these waves here? You should make them look like more like waves, like more like water. It was like, I was like, what could I say? He's right. It looks like shit. You know, it was a funny moment though. I guess I'm not really sure.
That's some balls on you though, knowing that it fell short. You're still looking for feedback.
Yeah, I was, yeah. And I'd been in my high school newspaper at the point where we were like going from like cut and paste traditional production to digital. So I'd started using Adobe programs back in '93. I was like doing InDesign when it was PageMaker. I think it was Photoshop 2 at that time. So I think I had made a mock-up book that looked kind of cool as a product. So that was like one edge I was following there. And pretty much after college, I started doing graphic design for, you know, a living for about 10 years. And I was like a flash animator at a startup in Seattle. That was pretty cool. I got fired from that. I started getting fired from a lot of jobs when I started doing graphic design professionally. Part of this is that I don't know, I don't really fit into the kind of corporate world that well. And
Yeah.
it's just my temper. I just like have freakouts sometimes, you know, not dangerous ones, but just enough to just, you know, step on my own tail trying to get to the finish line. And I eventually just left the graphic design trade because, you know, after I got fired from that flash design job right when the economy tanked and I was just scraping and struggling. And I kept like learning new stuff. And I was a graphic designer for print and web. I taught myself how to web program like in hand code, PHP and JavaScript. And I kept thinking like, this is going to show them that I'm like a pro and I can do this. And the more I diversified, the more I just didn't get hired anywhere. It's like that you have to specialize in that industry or no one believes you can do anything. It's kind of been a thing I've done all my life, is try out different mediums and kind of get good at different things like in short amounts of time, but still you just look like a dilettante, a jack of all trades, master of none to any hiring officers or creative recruiters at least.
That's annoying, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Like I even like just out of curiosity threw something out on Indeed recently, and it was like the same game. I heard back, and it's like, we need someone experienced. It's like, I've got 10 years experience, man. But okay. Anyway, I'm still doing the art, and I'm like, when the pandemic hit, I really got back into it with a fury. I've been writing a lot, and I was actually writing a fantasy novel. But here it is right in. I got it out here just to show you. It's this freaking big. It's giant. It's like 200,000 words right now. And like while I was going, I was kind of illustrating characters and stuff. And so I've got some cool character illustrations, and the evolution of my craft as an inker is really evident in some of those, because coming into it after kind of years of just using some technical pens, I started using crow quill and brush and starting to learn how to use them right this time. And I got to a point in the book where I'm just like, I've got a lot written, but it's kind of silly in points and it needs a lot of work and I don't know what to do yet. So I started doing some more comic oriented stuff. And this is like the second thing I've thrown together now or put together since I set that guy aside last year.
For people not in the know, give us an elevator pitch of Philip K.
So I've been saying it's like Defending Your Life, which is a film with Albert Brooks and Meryl Streep, but in Toontown. Like kind of, it's basically this guy. The first few pages, he dies, and it's kind of funny because obviously that's normally what happens at the end of a sad story, but it's the beginning of this silly one. And there's like a backdrop of mythology and religion and spirituality and metaphysics and philosophy, kind of piecemeal. I'm no expert in any of those, although I've kind of been interested in all those kind of fields throughout my life. But it's kind of the backdrop, and there's also a lot of stuff about just being a person and growing up. He's kind of like constantly has this crush on this princess Orchard Ivory that just kind of uses him and doesn't give a damn about him, but it takes him forever to realize it. And like hopefully finally he meets this other girl that is more his style or more like appreciative of him, kind of like going through that whole process of not necessarily lust, because it's not necessarily I'm aiming it for kids, but just that idea of desire based in the ego and that sense for accomplishment, or a sense of accomplishment and gratification that we want when we see the object of our desire and see it as like a challenge to accomplish, and then kind of evolving into something where he learns more about just the idea of sharing a relationship with someone and getting to know someone and liking them, and kind of priorities, as a human. There's also a thing with these Meanie-Balleenies that chase him around. They're these like balloons, these red balloons with faces, and each one's kind of different, and some of them are pretty wacky. But basically, whenever he gets mad and kind of expresses it, because he kind of bottles it up and stuff, ever since he's died anyway, and the between lives, which is not quite the afterlife, these Meanie-Balleenies show up and just mess with him and make a mess of everything. And, he gets in trouble because of them sometimes. There's a lot I have kind of planned out, and then I'm, enjoying the idea of the possibility of doing like a monthly book and just kind of letting what's happening to me at the moment also fill in spaces too. So I hesitate to get too detailed in my description of them, because that's kind of a key point to the plot. But basically, they kind of symbolize this kind of shame about being angry that he has, and so the idea is like to figure out how to like integrate those negative emotions in a positive way, figure out how to honor them and not be destroyed by them in the act of honoring them, which I struggle with as a human being. I'm a bit of a hothead.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. Especially with guys our generation, maybe older generations too. We know one emotion. It is anger. Um, do you? What other sorts of questions are you looking at to answer? Because I know this is a, you're a very thoughtful person and you like to think about a lot of stuff. So are you looking
Well,
to
one of
answer?
the things that I'm curious about, and and I want to do at some point, I don't want to let it like totally dominate the story because I don't want to be like bound to this idea of plurality as the central thing. But I kind of want to have this moment where there's like he sees some kind of mirror and like, he goes into this kind of hall of mirrors thing, like with like Ray and the bad, horrible Disney Star Wars like sequels or other things like that. But he's like sees versions of himself, and so have this point where all these other versions, like from different cultures and different kind of orientations, all come together and see each other eye to eye and see that they're all kind of the same or something. Like I want to explore ideas of like cultural and racial, but cultural I prefer to say just because I don't want to make it about race, but like cultural plurality and inclusivity and getting into when I talk about like religions, it's going to be kind of like sarcastic a lot of times, but it's also hopefully going to be affectionately irreverent, and it's going to really honor the cool things and maybe like even educate kids while it steers them away from organized religion, like but educate them in a positive way about it. I don't know. My goal is to kind of Pied Piper youngsters away from the dogma of organized religion. It always has been. I think it's like a noble thing that I don't really think there's been many efforts to do that, like in like kids' properties, and I guess for good reason. But
Yeah,
I'll know I'm successful if I end up drinking a bowl of hemlock juice. That's what I figure.
you do like, I mean, you do believe in a higher power, right? But
Yeah, I mean,
not an
I've
organized
often like
religion.
I've identified as an atheist a lot of my life just because it felt good to do so. But I kind of since the pandemic, I've had some experiences that reminded me more of my feelings about God when I was a kid,
Hmm.
and I don't feel comfortable identifying with any religious or spiritual path. I don't like the idea of gurus, even though they're kind of necessary. But I think atheists worship God without even knowing it. I mean, atheists tend to be the ones that talk about nature and that like hold math and science as these high ideals. And I can't imagine what a more articulate voice God could have as the like magnificent summation of all creation, other than the language of math and physics, which are the intrinsic kind of working values that inform the shape of reality, and the beauty of a sunset or a sunrise, that's to me, you know it, God. And I think atheists tend to like favor like nature and science and stuff, and I think that's uh, uh, a telling symptom that they might actually have a love for God and not even know it,
Yeah,
but
I'm the
yeah,
same way.
I get
Like,
that sense. I really like how open you are. It's one of the things I really love about your show is that you often have people on talking about mythology or, like say for instance, Duy Tano comics. I just went to their signing over at the Comic Bug here in
oh,
Culver City.
really? You were there?
Yeah, I went and stopped by and picked up a copy and talked for a second. They started getting busy right when I got in there, but
Cool. How were they?
oh, what's that?
How were they?
Oh, they're great. Yeah, is it AJ? No, I want to say it's AJ and
AJ and
yeah.
Erica.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was cool. It's a nice looking book. It's really cool. And like the idea of making like Filipino mythology like something that can be like presented to non-Filipino audiences. I think it's really cool, and
Yeah.
that's like one of the things I want to start checking out more is just different angles of mythology or spiritual traditions that I haven't been exposed to yet. So
Dude, go watch on Netflix. Go watch it's an anime called Trece. It's
yeah, I've been meaning to. I haven't gotten around to it yet. But that's one of the other videos I watched that you had in your
yeah.
library there. It looked really fascinating. Yeah.
It's got,
They weren't part of that one, were they?
was that?
That Diwata were those
No, they're
guys?
not related, but
Yeah.
no, Trece is the biggest comic here. And then they got an international release from Ablaze, so you can actually get it from a comic store now. there. It's funny because they've got books 1 to 3 released last year, except over here they're on book 8. So I'm like,
Whoa.
yeah, I know everything that's gonna happen, guys. So,
Yeah, okay.
but the cartoon was, I'm not gonna say it's the best cartoon ever, but you learn a lot about the Philippines and Philippine mythology and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, I need to check it out. I actually started looking at old Legend of Korra's because of the comment you put on Facebook the other day, but I've kind of like burned out, so maybe I'll try that out tonight.
Did you pick up on Diwata comics? Did you pick up that the main character is based on Erica?
I guess I hadn't really thought about it, but I could see that. She kind of came in after I'd been there for a minute. She was a little late getting there, I guess, so I didn't get to talk to her too much. But lovely lady.
Yeah. Because she's the co-writer and she's an actress, so they're basically writing it as a kind of a vehicle.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. It's smart, like media wise, it's smart.
Oh yeah. Heck yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but anyway, that's how I feel too about religion. I mean, I'm like, because I like math, and it's a little too organized for me to come off as completely random. You know what I mean? Like,
I
I feel
mean,
like it
yeah,
must have come from somewhere.
yeah. There's definitely some kind of miraculous aspect to how everything works with mathematics. Yeah, it's pretty undeniable. Whether or not you believe in miracles, it's pretty one of the most amazing things about reality. Yeah.
Tell me
Yeah.
where. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, actually, yeah, like, and that's another thing about comics too that Alan Moore has really reinforced again and again in his work is that you can talk about that stuff without being dogmatic or preachy or cheesy at all. Like, and I don't think you have to necessarily worship Glycon in order to do it, but I am making Glycon a character in this, and he'll show up in issue 2. I'm already penciling it in. And he's like this.
It's perfect. He's a perfect character to be in.
Yes, it's gonna be fun. He's smoking a candy cigarette. I don't know if that's appropriate or not, but Alan's a smoker, so kind of like gonna try and play him off as if it's Alan in a snake's body, but that's taking a lot of license.
It's okay. I mean, as long as you don't name Alan, I'm sure it's fine.
Right.
Tell me where you picked up your rendering style, because I'm looking at this picture of the pyramid here, and like,
yeah, I mean, I'm still putting it together, I guess. It's like I want to be able to do like everything that everyone I like does, I guess. I mean, there's stuff I really like about Scott Williams, because that was like the era that I really like just started wanting to become a comic artist was when I discovered Sylvestrian Green, but then evolving into Jim Lee and Scott Williams because they took over the Kenny X-Men and the X-Men. It was just like a revolution for everyone following comics. It was like, oh my god, or a revelation maybe is more adequate description. But I really like the way that the kind of like graded shading lines, go from thin to solid in the kind of shaded area before he goes to the little like jagged teeth or whatever. I want to just understand how to do that. So I'm trying to play with that. I really like, Brian Boland's style. Like sometimes it seems like he has like a little more like fat feathering maybe works with a brush where I'm not positive. I haven't really taken it apart. I really would love to be like Arthur Adams, but I don't think I'm clean enough. And it's like I struggle to keep the page clean and to keep things ordered well. I think I do okay with composition, but there's something so pristine about Arthur Adams' work that I want so bad to get that much control and that much consistency. I really like it. But some people like a more gestural style. And I think that comes natural to me, but whenever I do stuff and rely on my gestural instincts, it just looks like a shitty mess to me. Like I'm never quite happy with it. So, right now I've been trying to feather.
spoken like a true artist.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm very self-conscious about my work. Yeah. I'm trying to do more of like a brush style feathering with a crow quill, I think. I started playing more with a brush as something not just for fills, but as a drawing tool. And that's changing. I've been doing some of like the inking practice from the Dark Horse book of inking, just like that. It's got the Buscema Conan, like a few different Conans, like a Gil Kane and a Kurumi Buscema. Those have been really interesting to me. And I think I'm just going to keep trying different inking projects on the side like that and see where I get with the brush, because I really need that pressure on the page to feel like I'm in control of the line. So like brushes are weird to me because it just, you never get that. Like you never, until you're like smearing ink everywhere. And
No, it's all about softness.
yeah, yeah. And it's a cool feeling when you get something that looks good after doing it that way. I feel like more sophisticated when I ink that way. So, but like the Philip K stuff has a certain look to it, you know, and I'll probably like try and preserve that, at least for the moment, you know. Um, so I'll probably keep working with Croco primarily for the inking on him. I kind of like, I need to get, or I'd like to do a little more with blacks and fills and stuff like that, just in general in my art. But I, I just get tired of the thought it takes. And so it's kind of more fun just to hash it in and kind of, you know, then you can like throw some whiteout on it if you don't like it. It's not as big of a whiteout pool as if you blacked it in and you didn't like it. I don't know. It's, and yeah, I think I'll have to spend a lot more time on my pencils if I want to do more solid blacks and stuff in the finished pieces that I do, because it's always a trade-off with my like patience while I'm inking my own stuff, because I get impatient, and it's like I know that if I take too long on the pencils, I'm going to really rush through the inks, and it won't look as bad as it used to, but it's still probably a little bit worse than it should. Yeah.
Tell me where you get your sense of design, because I'm looking just at the cover, and I know there's some psychedelic sequences in this book. Like,
Well,
where do
like the
you?
cover is an homage to Alex Gray, you know, who's I think a fabulous artist. So I really lifted his layout for the cover. But you know, I did do design work for a decade pretty much, and I'm pretty solid with kind of laying out space on 2 dimensions now. I feel like it anyway. I can kind of, I don't really like lay out the ghost lines to figure out, what the rule of thirds or whatever. And someone showed me a thing where you can on a rectangle do an X for the whole thing, and then an X in a square at the bottom or the right, and then X in the square at the left or the top. And you end up with this kind of weird diamond shaped thing, and a lot of famous pieces like lay out in a way that just looks like it's made for that space. So there's like something happening in the eyes that wants to naturally kind of create these compartmentalizations in the layout when you're doing it, I think.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you're aware that you're still learning, and then you're gonna be applying whatever feedback you get to future issues and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, probably some of it I probably ignore, but yeah, I don't know. I think that's the thing I'm into more than anything. I love telling a story, and I love telling a story in this medium, but more than anything, I just love learning new shit. Like, and that's been like one of the most overarching things that you can say about me as a creator throughout my life, is that I'm constantly getting fascinated with new things. Like I've built these guitars that are on the
Yeah,
wall over there. I did that for a while. I tried to make a business out of it, but I wasn't successful. So now it's just for fun when I have time.
it looks
But
cool.
it's yeah, I mean, things like that I've picked up have challenged me in ways too, like the guitars or the web programming. When I started learning that, it was like they addressed parts of me that were lacking. And even if they didn't turn into the thing I'm doing with all my time or heart, like those studies actually really impacted me, just as an artist or creator. And so it's helped me become more articulate and specific in the things I do. It's helped convince me why it's good to plan things out ahead of time. It's because it's both of those things, web programming or guitar playing, it's all about process. It's often very simple things that are just laid out in a certain methodical way, and if they aren't, it's not going to work. But they're all ultimately small mechanical tasks that are just arrayed together. And it's cool to apply that kind of discipline into something that traditionally I've relied on, kind of expressive ability and stuff, like with like drawing and whatnot. It's made me a much better draftsperson. So I'll probably keep on figuring stuff out. Who knows what I'll get into from here? But I really have been ignoring people all my life. They're like, you need to focus on one thing, and I'm pretty hell bent on just focusing on one thing for the first time in my life. We'll see what happens. But
Philip K is more than halfway through its goal of 3,000 US dollars at the moment. As of the moment we speak, it's got 17 days left to go. It will end on March 30, 2022. You have several tiers here, so you've got $5 is a digital copy of the comic book.
Yeah.
15 is both a physical copy and a digital copy. You will ship anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
30 is 3 physical copies of the comic and a digital copy. More than 30, you include the poster of.
There's a couple different. I got 11 by 13 here, and then a 12 by 18. They're kind of glossy prints, but they look pretty nice. It turned out pretty well. Morris Publishing put them together for me.
So it is up to the reader, to the backer, which one they're gonna get, right?
Yeah. I think there's like a $5 difference because the size is more about the shipping it's going to cost in larger format or something like that. But yeah. I mean, I think I did okay. I know I've seen like a little more expensive like Kickstarters on there, like, so I'm trying to like not be like too expensive. I often undersell myself, so I'm trying to focus on keeping the line here and making sure I get enough to get the job done once it's through. Because I plan on succeeding.
It costs what it costs.
Right.
What can you do?
I know.
$85. You're giving out character design art or B&W art.
Well, it's all black and white character
Yeah.
designs. I have like a series of them on there in the thumbs. Like if you scroll down the story, all the original art rewards have like thumbnails that you can look at and click on to see larger versions of and stuff. There's a ton of art for sale.
For 120, that's mostly for retailers, 25 copies.
Yeah, put one on there that's about like the exact price of the comics, basically shipping included.
150 is the original black and white page art, the one single page, which will include still the comic itself. 275 is black and white double page spread.
That's right.
And $350 and $500, people can place an ad.
Yeah. And what I'm offering too is my design services. So like not only can they get an ad in my thing, but if they have an advertising need, they can basically get me to do the collateral for them with that, which is actually a deal. Like if you're hiring a graphic designer for a serious ad, you might spend more than that. So not only can you get a placement in the book, but you can also get the ad content done and it'll be yours to use anywhere else afterwards.
It's pretty cool. And for $3,000, a custom built, one of a kind Sammy Hollow electric tenor guitar.
Yeah, there you go. It's the only one I have on hand that I haven't really played on. I originally built it hoping to give it to Nico Case, who's a favorite artist of mine. She plays on tenor guitars, and I think it might have been too flashy for her. And I think I had like been shit talking Billy Corgan on Twitter. Like it's the only like Twitter exchange I ever had before I hit her up, and it was really cool. She was really flattering about it, but like after the fact, I was like not hearing from her or her tour manager. I even knew someone on tour with her, just through a friend of a friend that was playing lead guitar on her tour that year, and still I wasn't able to get her this guitar. And when I finally like checked it out, I was like, oh shit, yeah, I had said some kind of like some bad stuff to Billy Corgan just a little bit before. That's probably the only thing she saw when she looked at my feed history. So
what did you say to Billy Corgan?
I don't know, man. I don't know why I hate Billy Corgan, but I'm just not that in. I liked Smashing Pumpkins for a while, but I don't know, man. I think it was something that happened when I won't get into it, but some effects pedal builder in Portland had built something, and he had her going back and forth on this stuff for a while, and I think maybe I was taking her gripe too seriously, but she was really upset and trying to get everyone to like talk smack to him on Twitter to kind of like pay retribution, and I jumped on that bandwagon. I'm off Twitter now, man. There's just too much incitement to rage on there. It's not helpful.
Yeah. No, Twitter is a place where you're like, I like, you'll be like, I like mangoes, and then somebody will be like, well, what does that mean about bananas? Why didn't you mention, why didn't you mention bananas? It's like,
it's a great point.
I didn't say a damn thing about bananas, and you know it.
Yeah, I noticed, Duy.
Yep, that's what Twitter is.
Banana hater.
Yeah. Anything else you want to plug or anything else you want to say about the comic?
Um, I can't think of too much. I'd really love people to come and check out the Kickstarter.
Which the link I will put down below this video.
Yep. And it's exciting to be on here and talk about it with you. I guess that's what I want to say about it. It's thanks so much for giving me a chance to plug it and talk about it a little bit. There's a lot that I have planned out, and there's going to be a lot of surprises I haven't planned out as I start telling the story. So I think it's going to be something for everyone. You know, it's certainly not just for kids, even though that's kind of how I'm trying to push it. That might just be so I keep it in mind myself as I'm writing it, so I don't start cussing and doing anything bad. But yeah, come check out Philip K. and the Land of the In-Betweeners.
Thank you, Sam. This was great.
Thank
It's
you.
nice to finally talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Take care.